Greetings, Shalom. It's great to have the opportunity to spend a few minutes together. And I want to express my gratitude to Rabbi and Rebbitzin Tal for all the efforts they're putting out during this time, especially to unify everybody. And for me, this is wonderful that despite all the devastating effects of the stay-at-home orders, I can steal a few minutes to spend together with you and to share a thought on Shavuot. So without further ado, I want to discuss the idea of Chetzio Lachem Bechetzio LaHashem. On Shavuot, we have an imperative to devote not only time to Torah study, not only time to spiritual growth, but also to enjoy the day physically, materially. The Gemara brings down in Pesachim, on page 68, Rabbi Eliezer teaches that on Yom Tov, this is on Yom Tov generally, one can either spend the entire Yom Tov eating and indulging in physical gratification. Alternatively, one can spend the entire day in spiritual pursuits, in prayer and study. And Rabbi Yeshua disagrees. He says, Chalkehu, divide it. Chetzio la'achila v'shtia, half of it should be spent indulging in eating and drinking. V'chetzio lebeit hamidrash, and half of it should be devoted to the study hall, engaged in spiritual pursuits. Rabbi Yochanan teaches that they both derive their position from the very same sources in the Torah. In one place in Deuteronomy, it says, Atzeret la'Hashem Elokecha, that Yom Tov should be a festival for Hashem. And in Numbers, in chapter 29, it says, Atzeret ti elachem, that Yom Tov should be a festival for you. So Rabbi Eliezer says, how do we reconcile? Is it for Hashem or is it for you? So he says, well, do one or the other. Either it should be entirely for you, practice it that way, or it should be entirely for Hashem and practice it that way. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, that the Torah is expressing the idea that it should be a duality, that we should have both of these elements in the celebration of Yom Tov. Both spiritual pursuits and physical gratification and enjoyment. So how in Rabbi Eliezer's position, if we're not going to indulge in physical pleasures necessarily, how do we fulfill the mitzvah v'samachta b'chagecha? We have to be joyous on our festivals. How are we joyous if we practice asceticism, sitting in the study hall or engaged in Torah study and prayer? So he points out that the verse, Pikudei Hashem Yisharim Misamchei Lev, which we recite in Psalms every Shabbat morning, the teachings of Hashem are just and they bring the heart to rejoice, that one gains a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from studying and understanding words of the Torah. So you could fit pleasure into spiritual pursuits, and in fact, one can derive a great deal of pleasure if one devotes one's time to that and energies. So on Yom Tov generally, that's the pathway. But what about Shavuot? One would think that Shavuot should be different. Shavuot, of all Yomim Tovim, we should celebrate specifically through study of Torah. We should engage and devote all of our energies to the study of Torah, since this reflects the day and commemorates when we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. But the Gemara there concludes, Rabbi Eliezer says that on Shavuot there's no discussion, there's no argument. On Shavuot, everybody agrees, Debatzeret ba'ina nami lachem. On Shavuot, you also have to have a material element to the celebration. What's the reason? Because this is the day the Torah was given. Yom shenitna bo Torahu. This is the day the Torah was given. So what? So Rashi points out, says that because it's the day the Torah was given, it's appropriate that we should express our satisfaction in the Torah by celebrating it physically. But that still doesn't answer the question. If we can celebrate by engaging in spirituality, shouldn't that be the most appropriate way to celebrate Shavuot and not indulge in physical pleasures, not eat and drink? So there's a fascinating midrash that you're probably familiar with. When Moshe ascended to the heavens, he went to receive the Torah, top Mount Sinai. It says when he arrived, he found a barrier that the ministering angels did not want to allow the Torah to be released from heavens. They said the Torah is not, the place for Torah is up in the heavens, up in the spiritual realms. It should not go down to humans, to mortals. That's not the place for Torah. Because as it says in the verse in Psalms, again, Tenahotcha ala shamayim, put your glory in the heavens. And the Torah is Hashem's glory, and that's the appropriate place for it. So Hashem turned to Moshe and said, okay, answer them. So it says that Moshe grasped onto the heavenly throne and he said to the angels, does it say in the Torah, what does it say? Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the first of the 10 commandments, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. He turned to the ministering angels. Were you in Egypt? Were you delivered from slavery? Humans were. What about the next? Lo yelecha Elohim achirim al panai, you shall not have any other gods before me. There's no competition in heaven. Their deity is not ascribed to any other entity than Hashem in heavens. So for this commandment to be relevant, it has to be practiced by those below on earth. And he went through all of the different commandments, honoring parents, Shabbat, the different drives to passionate crimes, to murder, adultery, etc. Those really only apply to humans. There's no application for ministering angels. And they conceded that he was right, and they released the Torah. So Moshe was able to take the Torah down to earth. So that's the way that the Midrash expresses this idea of how the Torah is appropriate despite its esoteric nature and how it reflects such a deep spirituality. Nevertheless, its appropriate place is down here on earth. There's another Midrash. Moshe went up again to heaven, and there he encountered the Almighty was affixing crowns to the letters of the alphabet. And he said, what's this about? What's the purpose of these crowns? And Hashem said to him, in the future there will be a scholar, and his name is Akiva ben Yosef, and he's going to extrapolate tremendous ideas and nuanced lessons from these crowns on the letters. And Moshe was astounded. Could there be such a tremendous scholar? And the Torah shouldn't be given through him? So he was transported through time, and he was transplanted into Rabbi Akiva's lecture. And he sat in one of the back rows, because at that time in Rabbi Akiva's shir, you had to merit to move up. You had to understand and participate and demonstrate your scholarship in order to move up the rows. And Moshe was placed near the back because he couldn't understand what was being taught. And he felt ashamed. He felt insulted that this is his Torah that he brought down, and here generations later, it's so esoteric, it's so difficult for him to wrap his mind around what was being taught. So he sat through the lecture, and he was feeling worse and worse until one student raised his hand and asked Rabbi Akiva, Rebbe, how do you know this? What's the source of this great teaching that you're positing here? And Rabbi Akiva responded, Halacha l'Moshe miSinai. There's no other explanation. This is transmitted directly from Moses at Sinai. And this mollified Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? What's going on here? What is the Midrash reflecting? So Rav David Levanon, a great teacher and scholar in Israel, teaches that what was going on here is this tension of the Torah. Where is its place? Is it in heaven above, as we talked about earlier, or on the earth below? And the idea here is that it's both. It has to be both. It has to be both in heaven, and it has a place there, and it's Torah l'Moshe miSinai. All the Torah was transmitted from Moshe on Sinai, but as we know, lo b'shamayim, the Torah now is down here on earth. It cannot be decided. Rulings cannot come from the heavens. They have to be understood and applied by the scholars who live contemporary times, and they're able to take the halacha and put it in the context where it can be practiced. And therefore, with these two elements, that's why we have on Shavuot, Chetzi Ola Hashem v'Chetzi Ola Hashem. Half of the day should be devoted to spiritual endeavors, reflecting the heavenly origins, and the ultimate authority of the Torah. But at the same time, it's applied and put into practice here on the earth by human mortals, by people who enjoy also physical pleasures, to delight in nice foods and desserts and drinks, to be able to enjoy ourselves with a stroll in the sunshine. That's the idea that the Torah also needs to be expressed physically, expressed through material enjoyments. And so even though on other festivals, Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that you should celebrate it either in to one extreme or the other, all in physical indulgences or all in spiritual pursuits, on Shavuot he agrees that you need to have at the very least some physical gratifications through which to celebrate. May we all have a blessed and wonderful Shavuot, and even though we're not together and we're not with one another and nobody is together in many parts of the world, we should make the most of it and continue to study and enjoy together. All the best.